The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched vast and silent. 1,200 representatives from across the galaxy sat in circular rows, their seats arranged by age and importance. At the center platform stood Ambassador Kalen Voss of the Threxy hegemony. His blue-scaled skin reflected the soft lights as he checked the time display. The humans would arrive any moment now. Voss felt completely calm. He had done this 7 times before, welcoming new species to the council. It always went the same way. The newcomers arrived, nervous and excited. They looked around with wide eyes at the ancient station and the powerful civilizations gathered here. They listened carefully to the rules. They accepted whatever status the council offered. Then they went home to tell their people about the wonderful galaxy they had joined. Humans would be no different. "The human vessel has docked," announced Security Director Tharn. The Voric officer's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he watched his security feeds. Their ambassador is entering now. The chamber doors opened. Ambassador G1 Park walked in with 3 others behind her. She wore a simple dark suit. Her black hair pulled back. She looked around the chamber once, nodded slightly, then walked to the speaking platform with steady steps. Voss had expected hesitation, maybe fear. He saw neither. This woman moved, like someone entering a business meeting, not the seat of galactic power. "Welcome, humans," Voss said with his practiced warm tone. "We gather to celebrate your species, joining the great community of civilized worlds. For 12,000 years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace and prosperity. We have welcomed 847 species into this noble fellowship. Today, we welcome the 848th. Park bowed slightly. "Thank you, Ambassador Voss. We are honored to be here. We have prepared probationary observer status for your species," Voss continued. "This is traditional for all newcomers. You will learn our ways, understand our systems, and in perhaps 50 or 60 years, you may apply for full membership." Voss waited for the grateful acceptance. Instead, Park pulled out a data tablet. "I have some questions about that," she said. The chamber stirred. "Questions already?" Most species spent their first session just thanking the council repeatedly. "Of course," Voss said, though his smile felt slightly forced. "Though, I assure you, our processes have worked perfectly for millennia." "I'm sure they have," Park said. Her tone remained polite. "But I'd like to understand the representation structure. How are votes weighted? What appeals process exists for trade disputes? How are enforcement decisions made? And who oversees the enforcers?" Voss blinked. These were complex questions that most species took decades to even think about. These are detailed matters, perhaps better discussed after you've had time to study our systems. "We have studied them," Park said. She tapped her tablet. "For the past 8 months, we've been analyzing every council transmission we could access. Your public broadcasts, your trade regulations, your legal frameworks. Very thorough documentation, I must say." High Arbiter Quellen leaned forward in his elevated seat. The ancient being's energy form flickered with interest. 8 months? Humanity had only been contacted 9 months ago. They had spent nearly all that time researching? "Most impressive," Quellen said. His voice echoed like wind through crystals. "Few species show such dedication to learning. What have your studies revealed?" Park looked directly at the High Arbiter. "That the Galactic Council is the oldest continuous government in known space. That you've prevented 17 major wars and countless smaller conflicts. That you've established trade networks benefiting trillions of beings. These are remarkable achievements." Voss relaxed slightly. "Good." The human understood the Council's importance. "However," Park continued, "we also noticed that voting power is based primarily on how long a species has been a member. That full membership takes an average of 73 years to achieve. That enforcement actions are rarely reviewed by independent bodies. And that species in probationary status have almost no formal protections, if senior members decide to exploit them economically. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages. How dare this newcomer criticize the council? Who did humans think they were? Voss raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Park, I understand that outsiders sometimes misunderstand our systems. The age-based voting ensures stability. The long membership process allows proper integration. Our enforcement is handled by the most experienced civilizations. Everything has good reasons. I'm sure it does, Park said. Her voice stayed level. From your perspective. But from the perspective of younger species, it looks like a system designed to keep power exactly where it is. That is enough, growled Ambassador Dreth of the Korgothi Empire. The massive reptilian slammed one, clawed hand on his desk. You know nothing of galactic politics, human. You have been in space for barely a century. We have maintained order for 12,000 years. You will show respect. Park turned to face Dreth directly. We will show respect when respect is earned. We will offer cooperation when cooperation is mutual. We will accept guidance from those who have wisdom, not just age. If that makes us difficult, then you're not ready for humanity. Tharn watched from his security station. Something cold settled in his chest. He had seen hundreds of species join the council. They all reacted with awe and gratitude. This human woman looked at the council the same way Tharn looked at potential security threats. She was evaluating, calculating, judging whether the council was worthy of humanity, not the other way around. Voss decided to end this before it got worse. The council will take your comments under advisement. Ambassador Park. We grant humanity probationary observer status. As is traditional, you may attend sessions but not vote. You may trade under council regulations but not set your own terms. You may speak when recognized but not propose legislation. These limits will remain until we determine humanity is ready for greater responsibility. Understood, Park said. She didn't look disappointed or angry. She looked like someone who had just confirmed something she already suspected. We accept probationary status. For now, but know that humanity didn't cross the stars to sit in the back row and wait for permission to matter. We'll follow your rules while we're learning. But we're learning very, very quickly. She bowed again, turned, and walked out. The chamber stayed silent for a long moment after the doors closed. Well, Quellen said finally. Voss tried to laugh it off. Young species always have pride. They learn humility with time. Voss? But Tharn kept watching the security feed, showing Park's ship departing. He had spent 2 centuries protecting the council from external threats. Now he wondered if humanity might be something else entirely. Not a threat to destroy the council with weapons, but something more dangerous. A species that might prove the council wasn't as perfect as it claimed. 3 months had passed since humanity's first council appearance. Ambassador Voss sat in his private office, reviewing reports, and none of them made him happy. The humans were supposed to be quiet. They were supposed to spend years learning and adapting and being grateful. Instead, they were everywhere. Human trade ships moved through neutral space zones, making deals with smaller species. Human scientists published research papers that questioned long-held council theories. Human entertainment spread across the lower-tier worlds. Shows and stories about struggle and victory that other species found strangely compelling. Humans didn't act like probationary members. They acted like they owned the galaxy. They're organizing, Security Director Tharn said, standing before Voss's desk. Quietly, but definitely. They've made contact with 47 species in probationary or lower-tier status. Regular communications, cultural exchanges, trade agreements that bypass council oversight. Number 1. That's not illegal, Voss said, though his tone suggested he wished it were. No, Tharn agreed. They're very careful to follow every rule exactly. But they're building something. A network. An alliance. Maybe. Voss's scales darkened with irritation. What do they want? I believe we're about to find out, Tharn said. Ambassador Park has requested a formal address to the full council. Today. 2 hours later, the council chamber filled again. This time, the representatives came with curiosity instead of ceremony. What would the humans say now? Park took the speaking platform. She carried no tablet this time, just a small data chip. Honored council members, she began. 3 months ago, you granted humanity probationary status. You told us to learn your systems, follow your rules, and prove ourselves worthy of your trust. She inserted the data chip. Holographic displays appeared above every representative's desk. These are detailed analyses of council governance structures, compiled by human researchers. We've examined 12,000 years of council history, thousands of legislative sessions, millions of trade agreements, and hundreds of enforcement actions. Voss felt his stomach tighten. He had expected a request, maybe a complaint. Not this. What we found is remarkable, Park continued. The council has indeed maintained peace. You've prevented catastrophic wars. You've built incredible infrastructure. These achievements deserve recognition. Some representatives relaxed slightly. At least the humans appreciated something. But we also found significant problems. Park's voice hardened. Systematic problems. Structural problems. Problems that have existed so long you don't even see them anymore. She highlighted data on the displays. The top 50 council positions are held by species who have been members for over 8,000 years. In the past 2,000 years, only 3 species have moved from lower tier to senior status. The voting system means that the oldest members can override the combined votes of the newest 300 members. This system ensures stability, Ambassador Dreth rumbled. Experience must guide decision-making. Experience is valuable, Park agreed. But this isn't just about experience. Look at these enforcement cases. More data appeared. When senior member species have trade disputes with junior members, the senior species wins 94% of the time. When junior species appeal decisions, their appeals are rejected 89% of the time. When corruption accusations are made against senior members, investigations are opened only 12% of the time. The chamber filled with angry voices. How dare she accuse council members of corruption? These statistics meant nothing, without context. High Arbiter Quellen raised his hand for silence. These numbers require interpretation. Ambassador Park. The senior species win disputes more often, because they understand the law better. Appeals are rejected because they lack merit. Investigations are rare because accusations are usually false. Perhaps, Park said. Or perhaps the system is designed to protect those who created it. Perhaps younger species lose disputes because the laws favor older ones. Perhaps appeals are rejected because the same people who made the decisions review the appeals. Perhaps investigations don't happen because investigators report to those they would investigate. No, she looked around the chamber slowly. You've built a system that can't fix itself because the people with power to change it benefit from keeping it exactly as it is. Voss stood. Ambassador, you go too far. The council has maintained order for longer than your species has existed. We have earned our authority through millennia of service. You cannot simply arrive and demand we change everything to suit your preferences. We're not demanding you change for us, Park said quietly. We're suggesting you change for them. She gestured at the lower rows where hundreds of junior species sat. Every one of them joined the council hoping for opportunity and fairness. How many found it? How many are still waiting after decades for the chance to be heard? How many follow rules they didn't help create? Enforced by courts they don't participate in. For the benefit of civilizations that don't need more benefits. Some representatives in the lower rows shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded slightly. You asked what humanity wants, Park continued. We want reforms. Transparent voting records so everyone knows how decisions are made. Independent oversight bodies to review enforcement actions. Protection systems for junior species against economic exploitation. And representation based on contribution, not just age. Let species prove their worth through their actions, not their patience. Impossible, Voss said flatly. Such changes would destabilize everything. The Council works because we respect tradition and hierarchy. Without those principles, we have chaos. You have stagnation, Park replied. You have a government that cannot adapt because adaptation threatens those in power. You have a system that younger species resent but cannot change. That's not stability. That's pressure. Building toward an explosion. Dreth slammed his desk again. You speak of explosion? Is that a threat, human? No, Park said. It's a warning. We've seen this before in our own history. Systems that refuse to reform eventually break, sometimes peacefully, sometimes violently, but they always break. We're offering you a chance to change before that happens. And if we refuse? Voss asked. Park smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Then humanity will continue following your rules exactly. We'll build our networks, strengthen our alliances, and prove our worth to other species who feel the same way we do. You'll face a choice. Reform voluntarily, or watch as enough species unite to force reform. We'd prefer the first option. It's less messy. The Council does not respond to pressure, High Arbiter Quellen said. His energy form pulsed with something that might have been anger or might have been concern. We will not be threatened into abandoning principles that have served the galaxy for 12,000 years. Then we have nothing more to discuss today, Park said. She bowed. Thank you for your time. She left. The chamber exploded into argument. Tharn watched her go and felt that cold feeling in his chest grow stronger. The humans weren't trying to destroy the Council. They were trying to replace it with something better. Or rather, they were organizing others to help them do it. That night, Voss met privately with Quellen and several senior members. They discussed the human problem. They're dangerous, Voss said. Not militarily, but ideologically. They're making other species question the system. Perhaps, Quellen said slowly. Some questions are worth asking. Voss stared at the High Arbiter. You cannot seriously consider their demands. I consider everything, Quellen said. That is why I have survived 12,000 years. The humans are arrogant and impatient, but they are not entirely wrong. Our system has flaws. Perhaps it is time we acknowledged them. Change now would appear weak, Dreth growled, like we're surrendering to human pressure. Change never appears strong to those who benefit from the status quo, Quellen observed. But failure to change appears far worse when the alternative is collapse. The meeting ended without decisions. But seeds of doubt had been planted. Ambassador Park sat in her quarters, reviewing the session. It had gone exactly as expected. She hadn't convinced the Council to reform. Not yet. But she had made them defend their system publicly. She had made junior species aware of the statistics. She had made everyone think. That was enough. For now. The alert reached Council Station at 0300 Standard Time. Security Director Tharn received it first, his 4 eyes scanning the data with growing alarm. By null dri ein null, he had woken every senior council member. What do you mean the Krell have awakened? Ambassador Voss demanded through the communication link, still half asleep. Exactly that, Tharn said grimly. Deep space monitoring stations detected massive spatial distortions in the outer reaches. The signature matches historical records. The Krell swarm has emerged from dormancy. Voss felt suddenly very awake. Every civilized species knew about the Krell, silicon-based organisms that reproduced in century-long cycles. They would expand explosively, consuming resources from dozens of worlds. Then retreat to deep space, to process and reproduce. The last emergence had been 117 years ago. The Council had barely pushed them back then, and that was when the Council fleet was stronger. How many? Voss asked. Estimates suggest this swarm is 3 times the size of the last emergence. By 0600, the full Council convened in emergency session. The chamber felt different now, charged with fear instead of political maneuvering. High Arbiter Quellen addressed them with unusual urgency. The Krell swarm threatens 7 frontier worlds directly. Approximately 4 billion beings are in immediate danger. We must mobilize the defense fleets immediately. No one argued. Within hours, Council warships began gathering. Massive dreadnoughts, shield cruisers, and carrier groups assembled using doctrine perfected over millennia. The Council had fought many wars. They knew how to respond. Admiral Korth of the Dravian Concordat took command. He was ancient even by galactic standards, having led fleets for over 2,000 years. His strategy was traditional. Form massive battle formations. Use overlapping shields. Overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower. It had worked countless times before. It failed catastrophically against the Krell. The first engagement lasted 47 minutes. The Council fleet outnumbered the Krell 3-1 and had superior weapons. But the Krell swarm didn't fight like any normal enemy. They operated as a single distributed intelligence, each organism connected to the whole. When Council ships destroyed Krell units, the swarm learned from those losses. It adapted, changed tactics, found weaknesses. By the time Admiral Korth ordered retreat, he had lost 19 ships and thousands of crew. The second engagement went worse. The Krell had learned from the first battle. They knew Council tactics now, understood Council weapons. They destroyed 32 ships. Within 3 weeks, 2 frontier worlds fell. The Krell stripped them of resources, building more of themselves. Refugees flooded toward Council space, millions fleeing in terror. Ambassador Voss sat in a strategy session with the Council's military leadership. Admiral Korth looked exhausted. "We need more ships," the Admiral said. "Bigger formations. We can still win through attrition if we commit sufficient resources." "How many more ships?" Voss asked. 500 additional capital ships. Perhaps more. "That will take months to assemble," Tharn observed. "The Krell will have taken a dozen worlds by then." "Then what do you suggest?" Korth snapped. "These strategies have worked for 12,000 years. The problem is insufficient force, not flawed doctrine." A communication chime interrupted them. Tharn checked the message, then looked up with surprise. "The humans are offering assistance." The room fell silent. "Assistance?" Voss repeated. "What could they possibly contribute? They've been in space for barely a century. They have no experience with threats like this." "They claim their military has studied the Krell emergence," Tharn said, reading the message. "They're offering to commit combat forces under Council command." "Absolutely not," Admiral Korth said immediately. "I will not have untested primitives interfering with military operations. We should at least hear their offer," High Arbiter Kellen said quietly. "We are losing this war, Admiral. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford." 2 days later, Admiral Seo Yun Choi arrived at Council Station with representatives from Earth's 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. She was younger than most Council military officers, her black hair cut short, her uniform lacking the decorations that covered Korth's chest. "Thank you for seeing us," she said, simply. Korth looked her up and down with obvious skepticism. "What military experience do you have, Admiral Choi?" 23 years of service, she replied. "I've commanded ships in combat operations across 4 different conflicts." 4 conflicts, Korth said, his tone making clear this was pathetically few. "I have commanded fleets in over 200 engagements. The Krell swarm is beyond anything your species has encountered." "Probably true," Choi agreed. "But we've encountered enemies that adapt and learn. We've faced numerically superior opponents. And we've developed tactics for dealing with distributed intelligence systems. Our military history is shorter than yours, but it's been very intense." She brought up tactical displays showing human fleet compositions. Korth frowned. "Your ships are small. Light weapons. Minimal shielding. These would be destroyed instantly against the Krell." "Maybe," Choi said. "But size isn't everything. We don't fight like you do. We don't form massive battle lines and trade firepower. We use mobility, deception, and coordinated strikes. Cowardly tactics, Korth muttered. Effective tactics, Choi corrected calmly. Your formations are powerful, but predictable. The Krell have learned to counter them. Our tactics are harder to predict because every engagement is different. Voss rubbed his temples. This was going nowhere. Admiral Choi, we appreciate your offer, but 4 billion people are going to die. Choi interrupted. Her voice stayed level, but something in her eyes went hard. Maybe 5 or 6 billion. If the Krell take more worlds, you can accept our help or reject it, but don't reject it because you're embarrassed to need us. The room went silent. No one spoke to council members that way. Tharn broke the silence. What exactly are you offering? Earth's 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. 78 ships, including carriers, destroyers, and support vessels. We'll operate under council command, but we need tactical independence. Our captains must be free to adapt without waiting for permission. Unacceptable, Korth said. Military operations require coordination and discipline. Ships cannot simply do whatever they want. Then you'll keep losing, Choi said bluntly. The Krell adapt faster than your command structure can respond. By the time you analyze their changes, issue new orders, and wait for confirmation, they've already adapted again. Our way works because our captains think for themselves. Ambassador Park entered the room. She had been listening from the observation area. The council needs to decide, she said. Accept our help with our methods, or reject us and continue losing. But decide quickly. People are dying while you debate. High Arbiter Kellen studied the tactical displays showing human ship configurations. They looked fragile compared to Council dreadnoughts. But the Council dreadnoughts were burning in space above frontier worlds right now. Admiral Choi will take command of the defensive operations in Sector 7, Quellen announced. She will have tactical independence within that sector. Admiral Korth, you will continue command of the main fleet. Korth looked like he wanted to protest, but something in Quellen's energy field suggested this was not negotiable. Council observers will accompany your ships, Korth said to Choi, his tone cold. We will document everything. If your methods fail, you will be held accountable. Understood, Choi said. And if our methods succeed? No one answered that. The human fleet arrived in Sector 7 3 days later. Council observers aboard the flagship watched nervously as human ships dispersed across the system. No tight formations. No coordinated shield walls. Each ship group operated independently, maintaining communication but not waiting for central orders. It looked like chaos. Then the Krell arrived. They came in their usual massive wave, expecting to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers. The human ships scattered like startled fish. They broke apart, regrouped, attacked from unexpected angles. Krell organisms tried to adapt, but every time they learned to counter one tactic, the humans shifted to something else. Human ships used the environment, hiding behind asteroids, using gravity wells, creating interference patterns that disrupted Krell coordination. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Krell had retreated. The human fleet had lost 4 ships. The Krell had lost hundreds. Council observers transmitted their reports in stunned silence. Admiral Korth read them with growing disbelief. The humans hadn't just fought. They had won. The war continued for 3 more months. Human tactics stabilized the front lines across 5 sectors. Council forces still outnumbered the humans 10 to 1, but increasingly, Council admirals requested human advisory units. Admiral Choi's name became known across the fleet, spoken with respect, and, among some older officers, resentment. But the Krell kept coming. For every nest destroyed, 2 more appeared. The swarm had established a massive complex in the Vardos system, converting 3 entire planets into breeding grounds. Intelligence estimates suggested tens of billions of Krell organisms were being produced there daily. Admiral Korth called another strategy session. This time, Admiral Choi attended as an equal, rather than a supplicant. The Vardos complex must be eliminated, Korth said, displaying the system on holographic screens. It is the heart of the swarm's reproduction. However, it is also the most heavily defended position we have encountered. The displays showed dense Krell formations around all 3 planets. Millions of organisms patrolled the space between worlds. Massive structures covered the planetary surfaces, pulsing with activity. Standard doctrine requires a siege, Korth continued. We surround the system, cut off resources, and slowly build overwhelming force. Timeline: 2 to 3 years before assault can begin. Total operation time: 5 to 7 years. That's too long, Tharn said immediately. The Krell will have spread to 40 or 50 worlds by then. Trillions of beings at risk. I am aware, Korth said coldly. But rushing against such defenses would be suicide. We would lose thousands of ships for minimal gain. The strategic calculus is clear. Admiral Choi studied the displays silently. Her expression was unreadable. You have thoughts, Admiral? Quellen asked. Yes, Choi said. I think a siege is the wrong approach. Of course you do, Korth muttered. I suppose you have a better idea? Actually, yes. Choi manipulated the displays, highlighting the planetary nest structures. The Krell swarm operates as a distributed intelligence, but that intelligence needs coordination nodes. These structures aren't just breeding facilities. They're processing centers where individual Krell receive instructions and share information. She zoomed in on specific structures on each planet. 3 primary nodes, 1 per planet. They're buried deep, but not impossible to reach. If we can strike all 3 simultaneously and destroy them, the swarm loses coordination. Without coordination, billions of Krell become just billions of individual organisms, still dangerous, but manageable. Korth stared at her like she had suggested flying ships directly into a star. Strike all 3 planets simultaneously? The defenses are impenetrable. We would need massive forces on each world. The casualties would be catastrophic. Yes, Choi said simply. They would. Voss felt sick. You're proposing a suicide mission. I'm proposing a winning mission with acceptable losses, Choi corrected. Your siege would cost years and possibly more lives in the long run. My plan costs lives now, but ends the war quickly. How many lives? Quellen asked quietly. Choi didn't look away from the High Arbiter. Human casualties estimated at 30 to 40% of forces committed. Supporting Council forces would take lighter losses, maybe 15%. Total dead, probably 50,000 beings. The room went silent. 50,000 dead in a single operation was unthinkable by Council standards. That is unacceptable, Korth said. The Council does not sacrifice its people so casually. Then the Council will lose slowly instead of winning quickly, Choi said. Her voice was flat, matter-of-fact. I'm not being cruel. I'm being realistic. War costs lives. The question is whether we spend them efficiently or waste them. Your siege would cost hundreds of thousands over years. My strike costs 50,000 over days. Ambassador Park entered the chamber. She had been consulting with her government. Earth authorizes Admiral Choi to proceed if the Council agrees, she said. We're willing to accept the casualties for human forces. We understand if Council members are not comfortable with such losses. It was carefully phrased, but everyone heard the implication. Humans were willing to do what the Council could not. Korth's face darkened. You question our courage? I question your strategic flexibility. Park replied. You've fought wars for 12,000 years, using tactics that minimize casualties, because you have time to spare. You don't have time now. The Krell don't care about your careful calculations. Adapt. Or lose. High Arbiter Kulin's energy form pulsed with complex colors that suggested deep thought. Finally, he spoke. Admiral Choi will execute her plan. She will command all forces in the Vardos operation. Admiral Korth, you will provide support as requested. Korth looked like he wanted to refuse, but Quellen's tone made clear this was not a request. The responsibility for losses is yours, Admiral Choi, Korth said coldly. History will judge you accordingly. History always does, Choi agreed. Preparation took 2 weeks. Human forces trained Council units in ground assault tactics. The Council soldiers struggled with the pace. Humans moved fast, made decisions in seconds, accepted risks that seemed insane. But they learned. They had to. Commander Minho Sung led the ground assault planning. He was younger than Choi, but his soldiers followed him with absolute loyalty. Council observers noticed that human troops didn't follow orders blindly. They questioned, suggested alternatives, debated tactics. Yet when decisions were made, they executed them perfectly. It was strange to Council military observers. This combination of discussion and discipline. Your troops lack proper respect for hierarchy, a Dravian officer commented to Sung. Our troops respect competence, Sung replied. Hierarchy is just a tool. When it helps us win, we use it. When it gets in the way, we work around it. The day of the assault arrived. The combined fleet entered the Vardos system. Immediately, Krell defenses activated. Millions of organisms moved to intercept. Human ships scattered in their chaotic-looking patterns. But this time, Council ships followed their lead, breaking formation, using independent tactics. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than rigid battle lines. Captain Haewon Kang commanded the fighter wing that would escort the ground assault ships. Her pilots were the best Earth had, flying ships that sacrificed protection for speed and agility. Remember your training, she transmitted to her pilots. We're not trying to kill every Krell. We're trying to get our ground forces through. Stay focused. The space battle was brutal. Human ships took terrible losses, creating openings for the assault transports. Kang watched 3 of her pilots die in the first 10 minutes. She kept flying. Council officers watched in horror and awe as human ships deliberately sacrificed themselves to protect the assault forces. Captains rammed Krell formations. Damaged ships flew suicide, runs to clear paths. It was terrible. It was necessary. The assault transports reached the 3 planets. Ground forces deployed under heavy fire. Commander Sung led the assault on Vardos Prime. The Krell nest structures rose like mountains, pulsing with organic technology. His troops moved through hellish conditions, fighting through Krell defenders that seemed endless. Keep moving, Sung shouted over combat communications. We stop. We die. Forward is the only direction that matters. They lost soldiers at every step. But they reached the primary coordination node. Human engineers placed shaped charges, with precision, born of desperate need. The countdown began. On Vardos 2nd, human and Council forces fought side by side. Council soldiers watched humans carry wounded comrades under fire, saw them share their last medical supplies with alien allies, witnessed them hold impossible positions so others could advance. On Vardos 3rd, the assault nearly failed. Krell defenses were stronger than expected, but a Council unit, inspired by human determination, made a suicidal charge that broke through. They reached their target. Across all 3 planets, the charges detonated within seconds of each other. The coordination nodes exploded. Massive structures collapsed, and across the Vardos system, billions of Krell organisms suddenly stopped receiving instructions. The swarm fractured. Without coordination, individual Krell became confused, disorganized. Some continued fighting. Others fled. Many simply stopped moving, their connection to the hive severed. The space battle turned from desperate struggle to cleanup operation. Without unified direction, Krell ships were just targets. The operation succeeded. The Vardos complex fell in 73 hours instead of 7 years. Human casualties were 42%. 37,000 human soldiers died. Supporting council forces lost 12,000. Total: 49,000 dead, 50,000 beings who would never go home. Admiral Choi stood on the bridge of her flagship, reading the casualty reports. Her face remained expressionless, but her hands shook slightly. Admiral Korth transmitted a message. He looked like he had aged a century. "Your strategy worked," he said quietly. "You won the war. But at such cost." "Yes," Choi said. "War always costs." The question was never whether people would die. The question was whether they would die for something that mattered. She looked at the tactical display showing the shattered Krell defenses. They died winning. The war ended 4 months after the Vardos operation. Without their central breeding complex, the Krell swarm collapsed. Remaining nests were destroyed methodically. The threat that had seemed overwhelming was gone, but the galaxy was different now. Changed in ways that went deeper than military victory. The Council convened to officially recognize the war's end and honor those who fought. The chamber was packed. Every representative attended. This time, when Ambassador Park entered, no one questioned her right to be there. High Arbiter Quellen addressed the assembly. His energy form pulsed with somber colors. "We gather to mourn the fallen and celebrate our survival. The Krell swarm threatened billions. We stopped them. But we must acknowledge a difficult truth. We could not have won without humanity's help." The chamber remained silent. For 12,000 years, the Council had been the supreme power. Now, an upstart species that had been in space for barely a century had saved them. "Humanity demonstrated capabilities we did not anticipate," Quellen continued. "Strategic innovation, tactical flexibility, and perhaps most importantly, the courage to make difficult choices." Admiral Korth stood to speak. He looked uncomfortable. "I have commanded fleets for 2,000 years, he said slowly. "I have won 200 engagements, using proven strategies. But against the Krell, my strategies failed. Admiral Choi succeeded where I could not. This is difficult to admit, but truth matters more than pride." He turned to face the section where human representatives sat. "The Council owes humanity a debt, one that cannot be repaid with words alone." Ambassador Park rose and walked to the speaking platform. She moved with the same steady confidence she had shown at her first appearance, but something was different. Before, the Council had looked at her with condescension. Now, they looked with respect. Some with fear. All with attention. "Thank you, Admiral Korth," she said. "Your acknowledgement means something. But I didn't come here today to talk about debts or gratitude. I came to talk about the future." She looked around the chamber slowly. 3 months ago, I stood here and criticized this council. I pointed out flaws, suggested you were stagnant, claimed you weren't ready for humanity. Some of you were angry. Some were insulted. All of you rejected what I said. "The war proved us wrong," Quellen said quietly. "The war proved my specific criticisms correct," Park replied. "Your rigid command structures couldn't adapt. Your emphasis on avoiding casualties meant you couldn't make necessary sacrifices. Your age-based system meant the voices with fresh perspectives were ignored. If you had listened to our suggestions 3 months ago, maybe 50,000 beings would still be alive." The chamber stirred uncomfortably. She was right, and everyone knew it. "But I'm not here to shame you," Park continued. "I'm here because humanity proved something else too. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We have our own flaws and limitations. But we're willing to change, to learn, to adapt. And we believe the galaxy needs that flexibility." She pulled out a data tablet. "This is a formal proposal. Humanity requests full council membership with a seat on the Security Directorate. But we will only accept if certain reforms are implemented." "CZ. Reforms?" Ambassador Voss asked. He sounded tired. "What reforms?" "Transparent voting records for all council decisions. independent oversight boards, with rotating membership to review enforcement actions, protection protocols for junior species to prevent economic exploitation by senior members, and representation weighted by contribution and population, not just age. Species that help the galaxy should have a voice in governing it. The chamber erupted. Half the representatives shouted support. The other half shouted refusal. The debate raged for hours. Ambassador Dreth of the Korgothi Empire finally slammed his desk for silence. The massive reptilian looked at Park with something between anger and grudging respect. "You ask for significant changes to systems that have worked for 12,000 years, he rumbled. You want us to abandon traditions because of one war. Why should we agree?" End quote. Why should we agree? Because the galaxy is changing, Park said simply. You've had 12,000 years of relative stability, but that stability was built on specific conditions that no longer exist. New species are emerging faster than ever. Technology is advancing rapidly. Threats like the Krell will come again. Maybe worse. You need a government that can handle change, not one that resists it. And you believe humanity should lead this change? Dreth asked. No, Park said. Surprising many. We don't want to lead. We want to participate. As equals. With all the responsibilities and rights that entails. We're not trying to replace the Council. We're trying to save it by making it something worth preserving. High Arbiter Quellen's energy form shifted through colors that suggested deep consideration. Finally, he spoke. The Council will debate these reforms. It will take time. There will be resistance. But I believe Ambassador Park is correct. We must change or become irrelevant. Perhaps humanity's greatest contribution is not their military capability, but their willingness to question systems everyone else accepts. A compromise emerged over the following weeks. Humanity would receive full Council membership and a Security Directorate seat. Reforms would be implemented gradually, overseen by a joint committee with representatives from multiple tiers. The changes wouldn't happen overnight, but they would happen. Some senior members resigned in protest. Others adapted. The galaxy moved forward. 6 months after the war's end, Ambassador Park stood with Security Director Tharn, watching a training facility where human and alien military officers trained together. This was your goal from the beginning, wasn't it? Tharn asked. You knew we'd need you eventually. You planned all of this. We planned for possibilities, Park admitted. We studied the Council and saw its weaknesses. We knew a crisis would come eventually. We made sure we'd be ready to help when it did. That's remarkably calculating. That's survival, Park corrected. Humanity learned long ago that power respects power. We couldn't demand a place at the table, so we made ourselves indispensable. Now we have that place, and we'll use it to make things better. For humanity? For everyone, Park said. We're not stupid. We know we can't thrive if the galaxy burns. Helping others helps us. Strengthening the Council strengthens our position. It's not charity. It's enlightened self-interest. Tharn watched human instructors teaching adaptive tactics to Council cadets. I was terrified of you when you first arrived, he admitted. I thought you were a threat to everything we built. We were, Park said. Just not the way you thought. We weren't threatening to destroy the Council. We were threatening to change it. Sometimes that's scarier. A communication chime interrupted them. Tharn checked it, then looked up with surprise. Long-range sensors have detected an unknown species entering Council space. First contact situation. 42, 42, 42, 42, 42. Park straightened. How is the Council responding? They're following new protocols, Tharn said, with something that might have been a smile. First contact team will include representatives from multiple tiers. Transparent documentation. No assumptions about hierarchy. They're using your suggestions. Good, Park said. She started walking toward the Council chambers. I should observe. First contacts are always interesting. What do you think they'll be like? Tharn asked, walking beside her. Park smiled. I have no idea, but I'm curious to see how the council handles this. Will they fall back on old habits? Or have we actually changed something? This will be the real test. They entered the council chambers as the first contact team assembled. Ambassador Voss was there, along with representatives from a dozen species. The mood was different from Park's first arrival. Less arrogant certainty, more genuine curiosity. The unknown species would arrive in hours. The galaxy waited to see what would happen. Park took her seat among the council members, not as an observer, not as a supplicant, but as an equal. It had taken less than a year, but humanity had gone from probationary newcomers to full members of galactic governance. And the real work was just beginning. High Arbiter Kellen addressed the assembly. We approach this first contact with new protocols and, hopefully, new wisdom. We have learned that every species has value, regardless of age or power. We have learned that strength comes in many forms. We have learned that the greatest threat to civilization is not external enemies, but internal stagnation. He paused, his energy form pulsing with warm colors. Humanity taught us these lessons. Sometimes gently, sometimes harshly, but always honestly. For that, we are grateful. The chamber affirmed with various sounds and gestures from dozens of species. Park sat quietly, thinking about the long road ahead. The council was changing, but change was slow and difficult. There would be setbacks, resistance, conflicts. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the Galactic Council was moving forward instead of just maintaining the past. And humanity would be there, pushing, questioning, adapting, and helping build something better. The unknown species ship appeared on sensors. First contact would begin soon. The galaxy was ready. Finally, truly ready. Not because they had all the answers, but because they were willing to ask better questions.